Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, 8th chapter and 47th verse. I'm just going to read 2 verses glorifying the Bhagavatam first. That literature, which is full with descriptions of the transcendental glories of the name, fame, forms, and pastimes of the unlimited Supreme Lord, is a transcendental creation meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of a misdirected civilization. That is such an incredible line. It's meant to bring about a revolution in the impious life of a misdirected civilization. Such transcendental literatures, even though irregularly composed, are heard, sung, and accepted by purified men who are thoroughly honest. And then also, this Bhagavat Purana is as brilliant as the sun and has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Purana. Okay. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suhridam Varam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vasamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suhridam Vadam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vashamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suridam Bhavam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vasamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suridam Bharam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vashamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suridam Bharam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vasamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suridam Bharam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vasamgata Aharaja Dharmasutash Chintayan Suridam Bharam Prakrite Natmana Vipra Sneha Moha Vashamgata. Aha said, Raja, King Yudhisthira, Dharmasutta, the son of Dharma, Yamaraj, Chintayan, thinking of, Suridam, of the friends, Vadam, killing, Prakritena, by material conception only, Atmana, by the self, Vipra, O Brahmana. Sneha, affection. Moha, delusion. Vasham, being carried away. By Gata, having gone. Translation by Srila Prabhupada. King Yudhisthira, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Please repeat. King Yudhisthira, son of Dharma, overwhelmed by the death of his friends, was aggrieved just like a common materialistic man. O sages, thus deluded by affection, he began to speak. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. King Yudhisthira, though he was not expected to become aggrieved like a common man, became deluded by worldly affection by the will of the Lord, just as Arjuna was apparently deluded. A man who sees knows well that the living entity is neither the body nor the mind, but is transcendental to the material conception of life. The common man thinks of violence and non-violence in terms of the body, but that is a kind of delusion. Everyone is duty-bound according to one's occupational duties. A Kshatriya is bound to fight for the right cause regardless of the opposite party. In such discharge of duty, one should not be disturbed by annihilation of the material body, which is only an external dress of the living soul. All this was perfectly known to Maharaj Yudhisthira, but by the will of the Lord, he became just like a common man because there was another great idea behind this delusion. The king would be instructed by Bhishma as Arjuna was instructed by the Lord himself. Amangana Timarandasya, Ganagana Slakaya Chakshra Amniratamrina, Tajna Shri Gurave Namaha. So here we have King Yudhisthira becoming, appearing aggrieved like a common man. And Prabhupada also refers to Arjuna in the same situation where he became completely bewildered and wasn't sure what to do. And Prabhupada says, well, it's because in the case of King Yudhisthira, he's going to hear from Bhishma, kind of sets the stage. And for Arjuna, it was being able to hear from Bhagavad Gita. But reading this verse, and as often happens, I felt it speaking like directly to me. And I'm sure we all can, because as much as we know, or as much as, King Yudhisthira know, there's just so many verses, that we learn from the very beginning. Dehinosmin daha dehe, komaram yovanam dra daha dehantras praptir dirs tatanamuyatis. As the embodied soul continually passes from boyhood to youth to old age, so the soul passes into another body at death. And nataveham tatuna samnam, Tuam nemi janadipa nachavana bhavishama sarvijayamata param, that never was there a time when I did not exist, nor you nor all these kings, nor in the future shall we ever cease to be. Or for the soul there is never birth nor death, nor having once been shall we ever cease to be. He's undying, primeval. So all these verses, we know so well. We've heard them so, and there's so many more that are espousing the same idea, but yet, my sister, who's 1 year younger than me, she has ovarian cancer, so she's, in one sense beaten so many odds, but it appears that she's really struggling at this point. And as much as I know, it's still so heartrending, to think of someone you have so much affection for that's getting ready to leave this world. So in the case of King Yudhisthira, it was so monumental because he felt responsible for this great war and for all the people and for his friends and relatives and teachers, family and friends, his loved ones that were all killed, and he feels very responsible for it. So in the purport of the verse, two very important words that Prabhupada repeats, moha, illusion, and sneha, affection. So there's actually 2 full lectures that Srila Prabhupada gives on these verses, and he mentions it in so many different places and gives so many examples of this. Like he gives one example of when Lord Chaitanya was wandering near the temple Ayodhya, and he looks at the sea, and he sees the sparkling of the water, and he starts thinking of the Jamuna River. So he runs to the sea, he jumps in the sea, and he gets carried away 20 miles north, and there's a fisherman who picks him up in his net and thinks that it's a big fish, and he touches Lord Chaitanya's body and immediately becomes, spiritually charged, and so much so that he's laughing, he's crying, he's completely in ecstasy. But he doesn't see it that way. He thinks, now I've touched the body of a ghost, and now I've become haunted. And Prabhupada, he says this is because of sneha. It's because of affection. He says, what's going to happen if I'm completely incapacitated and I can't take care of my wife and children? So here's someone that's spiritually charged, but that's all he can think of. And Srila Prabhupada gives another example where he's sitting. These are, things that personally happened to Prabhupada, where he's sitting in his room. There's bars in the windows so the monkeys can't get in. But a very tiny baby monkey, he managed to get in, And Prabhupada says the mother is beside herself. She is like crazy, crying and going back and forth. And so this moha, this sneha, it's not just the human race. We see it all throughout the animal kingdom as well, where, mother, father animals, they're trying to protect their children, this intense affection. Ultimately, Prabhupada is able to push the little baby monkey out through the bars, and again, he's free, and the mother's okay again. So this is, something that we have to deal with all throughout our lives, yet it explains in the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam how important it is for us to do our duty. Like in the summer, the wife, she may not want to cook, it's so hot. We've all had that experience, like, maybe you can just turn your air conditioning on, but if you don't have air conditioning, it's difficult. But do you decide, no, I'm not going to cook, it's too hot? No, you're going to go ahead and you're going to cook. Or in the winter, it's just too cold to do so many things, but you don't give up. You go ahead and you do your duty. So this is the case for Arjuna. Actually, I thought this was like really amazing, this verse. I'll read it from the Bhagavad Gita 32 through 35, where Arjuna says, "O Govinda, of what avail to us our kingdom, happiness, or even life itself, when all those for whom we may desire them are now arrayed on this battlefield? O Madhusudana, when teachers, fathers, sons, grandfathers, maternal uncles, fathers-in-law, grandsons, brothers-in-law, and other relatives are ready to give up their lives and properties and are standing before me, why should I wish to kill them, even though they might otherwise kill me? O maintainer of all living entities, I am not prepared to fight with them, even in exchange for the three worlds, let alone this earth. What pleasure will we derive from killing the sons of Dhritarashtra?" They've definitely got issues with the sons of Dhritarashtra, but at the same time, they grew up with them, they've played with them, they've taken prasadam with them. They're family. They're family. So this is a very, very difficult situation. So this is what the whole Bhagavad Gita is based on, that Krishna says, "Asoshan navasoshas tvam pragnitavadams cha basase gatastum akatastum cha nanushoshanti pandita." He says, Arjuna, although you're speaking learned words, you're mourning for what is not worthy of grief. The wise man, he doesn't lament. Ashosha means lament. He doesn't lament for the living or for the dead. So ultimately, Krishna, he's able to pick up his bow and he's able to fight, but such conflict. And I know for ourselves also sometimes there's such conflict when there's illness, or when there's untimely death, or when there's separation for some reason. Sometimes we see in families there's separation, and we're trying to understand, like, well, why is that? Why is there this separation where, siblings aren't talking, or parents and children aren't talking. But also, Prabhupada mentions that sometimes this also is a plan of the Supreme Lord, that the Supreme Lord, that he actually creates a situation to break the bonds of affection so that the devotee can open up basically his love, his affection for the greater population. And that, of course, is what sannyas, and that idea of vairagya vidya, that idea of having that knowledge and renunciation that enables someone to really take to Krishna consciousness. Because if you don't have at least some of that knowledge, how are we able to give up the so-called pleasures of the material world? So it's a combination of renunciation, and it's a combination of the knowledge that we receive from Srila Prabhupada's lectures, from the Bhagavatam, and from the Bhagavad Gita. So when we receive that knowledge, then it's param jishva nivartate, that one receives the higher taste. He gets a higher taste, That's the only way that you're able to give up the lower taste. Just like if someone's eating, bread from the store. He's eating it, he's enjoying it, but someone comes along and says, hey, I've got this bread that my mom just made, fresh from the oven. So you take it, you slice it, you put the butter on it, you offer it, and you eat it, and it's like, whoa, I don't need that bread from the store anymore. This is so superior. So for us as well, this idea that we're able to engage in Krishna service, we're able to take up a higher cause, And in some cases, we did have to give up some affection as well. How many people, when they joined the movement, their family members were disturbed? Okay, quite a few. They didn't want you to do it. They tried to convince you, sometimes even friends trying to convince us, that actually this is a cult, and you shouldn't join. They're just going to brainwash you. What does Prabhupada say about brainwashing? Yes, he says we do brainwash. We take the brain and we wash it clean. So in so many cases, we had to give up that, not that we gave the affection up, but we had to kind of put it on hold, because we had something that was more important. We had a mission that we felt spoke to us as it spoke to a way to relieve the miseries of the entire world. And that is really what Krishna consciousness is all about. That's real affection. That's real affection. When we're able to take to this process and we're able to give it to others. Prabhupada gives the example of misplaced affection. And he says once he was outside of his house and he saw a young woman in the next yard beating her child. And he was alarmed, and he sent his servant over there to find out, well, what's going on? Why is she beating her child? So the servant came back and said, well, her other son has typhoid, and you can't eat anything. You can't eat solid food when you have typhoid, or it just aggravates the condition. It makes it worse, and it can even lead to death. But the boy who was so sick, he said to his brother, I'm so hungry. Can you just get me a parata, please? Just get me something and let me, I'm just starving. So the little boy, he went and got a parata and he gave it to his brother, and the brother ate it. Now he's super sick. So the mother was spanking the child so that he wouldn't do it again, because she wanted both of her children to live. So Prabhupada makes the point that this is misplaced affection. This is illusion. This is misplaced affection. And he talks about charity, giving charity, and how that can be an illusion also, that there's three, like so many things that are in the modes of material nature. Charity is also under the three modes of material nature. There's a sattvika charity, which is when you give to a fully qualified brahmana, or you're giving a temple donation for the Purushottam month. You're giving it, and that has unlimited result. Or there's Rajasika charity, and that's really meant for some some good and also some personal profit. And then there's Tamasika charity, and Prabhupada gives the example, if you give something money to a drunkard, then you're paving your way straight to hell. So, he says there's so many philanthropists, and there's so many people who have this idea of wanting to give in charity, but if they give to the wrong charity, then they're in trouble. The laws of material nature are very strict. So you get some of that negative reaction. Let's say someone's giving a donation to Planned Parenthood, which is, my husband and I were talking about the other day, it's a euphemism for an abortion clinic. So you're giving money to thinking, yes, women's rights, and this is very important. Of course, they're not talking about the child's rights, but those people have to take a portion of the reaction for what's going on there. So it's so important that we understand this moha and illusion, and even though Prabhupada also says that we can't be cruel, it's not like we don't have feelings, we do have feelings. I remember reading where Srila Prabhupada, he had a son who just kind of went off, and it was Prabhupada's, he really loved this son, because this son, he was very good at Sanskrit and memorizing scripture, but somehow he went off when he was very young with another young girl, and he just kind of became lost. And Prabhupada would ask about him from time to time, saying, oh, have you seen, I forget what his name is, have you seen so-and-so? And one of his acquaintances said, yes, I did see him, and he was like, I think he said he was like picking up garbage from the street, something like that. So Prabhupada still had this feeling of affection, and he said, can you remind Pishima, can you remind his sister? She said that she would take care, she promised me that she would take care of this boy. So he still has the feeling, but he's not giving up his duty, which was the order of his spiritual master, which is to go on preaching this, this service, this Krishna consciousness. So basically, Krishna also says to Arjuna, you have to be an Aryan. An Aryan means someone who carries on a spiritual civilization as opposed to prakritena atmana, which means I'm the body, and doing everything in relation to the body, and those that are attached to the body. Sometimes charity, they say charity begins at home, and Prabhupada even said that one time, once. So, that, there's different ways to look at in different situations, but once the devotees were all in the airport, and they brought Prabhupada a big plate of prasadam, and Prabhupada took a little bit of the prasadam, and then the devotee was going to take it. He was going to, I'll take it and give it to the non-devotees. And Prabhupada said, no. He said, give it to the devotees. He said, charity, charity begins at home. So both things are there, that we take care of the devotees, and as much as possible, we also want to be able to give this Krishna consciousness to everyone. We want to be able to spread this mission. Prabhupada gives an example also of Sati, how Sati is very disturbed because her father, Daksha, has disrespected her husband, Lord Shiva. He hasn't given a place for him at the yajna. So first she goes and she tries to talk to him. She says, my dear father, my husband is a very great soul, but he's so agitated, Daksha, he can't be dissuaded from disrespecting Lord Shiva. So basically Sati says, okay, my dear father, you have given me this body, he says, but now I'm giving this body back to you. So she basically, by yogic power, she burns herself in fire, she does it herself, and then she goes on to take another body. But so this bodily change is something natural that happens, but because I know for myself, I'm so overcome by sneha and moha, by illusion and affection, I have to be constantly reminded. And that is why we have Bhagavatam classes and Bhagavad Gita classes regularly, to remind us, that sometimes when something out of the ordinary happens, when there is friction in the family, when there's separation in the family, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've done something wrong, as a father, as a sister, as a mother, as a friend. It may be that Krishna is just trying to broaden your base of Krishna consciousness and give you the opportunity to help more people. Just like Prabhupada, he said so many times that I gave up my family, but now I have so many children. You know, he had like 5,000 disciples all over the world that he was able to help. And sometimes we don't want to do that. Actually, Prabhupada didn't want to do that. He didn't really want to take sannyas. The first time he had a dream, the Srila Bhakti Siddhanta came to him in a dream and was beckoning him, please, you know, come with me. Prabhupada was a little taken aback, and he was like, I can't. You know, I have family, I have so many responsibilities, just like the fisherman who had just touched Lord Chaitanya. But he had the dream again, and then also, besides Srila Bhaktisiddhanta coming to him, Krishna also arranged to break the tie of affection because his wife was so uncooperative. You know, she took his Bhagavatams and sold them to buy tea biscuits, and no one in the family was very interested in Krishna consciousness. So we see some families where the whole family is very Krishna conscious. And we see other families where, you know, one or two or all of the children aren't very Krishna conscious, or maybe it's the wife or the mother that's carrying it. But in each situation, there's a specific reason for what's happening, that Krishna has his personal hand in it, and he's trying to help the devotee. He's trying to broaden the scope of your preaching. So we can understand that, and that makes it easier for us to be able to tolerate the situations that otherwise are not so tolerable. You know, Prabhupada also, he talks about, you know, the 3 stages of devotees, like there's Kanishta Adhikari, and in the Kanishta stage, the devotee is very attached to the deity, to serving the deity, which that's in all the stages, in Kanishta, Madhyama Adhikari, and Uttama Adhikara, all those stages, you know, where the devotee is very attached to the deity. But in the Kanishta stage, it's pretty much that you're attached to the deity, but not so much to anything else, not so much to the devotees. So Prabhupada makes the point that in the Madhyama Adhikara stage, how important it is to serve the devotees and to make friendships with the devotees. And then, of course, in the highest stage, the Uttama Adhikari stage, we can understand that in that stage, that the devotee, that Uttama Adhikari devotee on the highest stage, that he sees Krishna inside of everyone's heart, you know, every living being. And so he sees no fault at all in anything. He sees Krishna's perfect plan being carried out. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said that once too, that everything is going along according to Krishna's perfect plan. So sometimes that's very difficult to see when we see all the political unrest, you know, and also we see devotees taking sides, you know, very vehemently, and it's kind of sad because Prabhupada has said that devotees don't get involved in politics. It may mean that it doesn't mean that we don't vote, but it does mean that we shouldn't sever friendships over politics. You know, we have a higher purpose than the politics, and basically, you know, whichever party you're for, there's not all that much difference in the parties. You know, the idea is that we're trying to push on Prabhupada's mission. They are not interested in Krishna consciousness. And maybe one party that's more lenient towards the devotees, but basically that's not really our business. Our business is, Prabhupada says, bhakteshu chanyeshu, that we are going with a forward march. You know, no matter what happens, we are trying to share this Krishna consciousness. We're trying to move ahead with preaching, and we're also trying to move ahead with our own spiritual life. You know, the 9 stages of love of God. You know, the first stage is that you have some faith. Can anyone say how their faith manifests in the beginning? Like, what was it for you that made you take a second look? Maybe you were born into Krishna consciousness. Maybe you got a book. Maybe anybody want to share how their faith manifested? Okay, so I'll just say how. Okay, go ahead. Association of devotees. And how did you happen to come to the temple to begin with? Oh, Madhumati. Okay. So Madhumati, how did it happen for you?
I was searching, I was inquiring, I wanted to know what the meaning of life was. And so by Krishna's arrangement, I contacted the temple.
Repeat it, because it doesn't have a mic.
Okay.
Basically, the devotees association.
So you got a book first? You met a devotees?
No, I was looking for the meaning of life, and so I'm like, where do I go? Where do I search? You know. And
Yeah.
so
Hold on, Mother. The world wants to.
Basically, I was looking for answers. What am I supposed to do? I was 19, so that's an age where people start looking, you know. And so my parents weren't there. I was in Ireland. My parents were in India, and so they had left a Bhagavad Gita. I thought maybe this Bhagavad Gita can tell me something, and I couldn't understand anything. And so I said, okay, I don't know where to look. Then I thought, oh, maybe those Hare Krishnas may know something, because when my parents were in Ireland, we had gone to the temple. And I always avoided them on the streets because, you know, being an Indian, they would always approach us, you know. But so at this stage, I said, oh, maybe those people may know something. And so I called the temple there, and I had hours of conversation. I had so many questions, and they had answers to every single question I had. And so for me, it was, yeah, my answers. I got my answers, and then when I went to the temple, I just loved the devotees, and so the philosophy and the association still keeps me here. So.
Hi. And the prasadam.
Well, to be honest, when I went in Ireland, prasadam was like, oh my God, what do these people make? You know.
Really?
So I have to be honest.
Okay.
Prasadam was not the thing for me. Anyway, Hare Krishna.
Yeah, so that first stage, however it began, starts with faith. And then the second stage is sadhusanga. So I had some experience where I had so many questions. I mentioned it before in other classes. So many that I could never get answered. But when I came in contact with the devotees, again, they were able to answer every single question I had. And so I started associating with devotees, and I just loved the devotees. I just loved them. I just wanted, you know how even when you're not a devotee, you meet a friend and you're just like, I just want to be like him. I just want to be like her, you know. They have certain qualities, or they exude something that you want to have. So whatever it was that they had, I wanted to have it too. So I just started associating, more and more, just visiting during the day, sometimes spending the night sometimes. And they were so excited to have me there, that was part of it. So we have to remember how much that means, when somebody new comes, to really encourage them and let them know how happy we are to have them. And then Bhajana Kriya, that's the third stage, that's performing devotional service. So as we perform that devotional service, whatever it is that you're given, for me, whatever it was that I was into, I always just wanted to tell everybody else about it. Like when I gave up eating sugar completely, I went to my home and it was like, you shouldn't eat sugar, it's poison, it's really bad for you. And they're like, okay. And then when I became a devotee, I just wanted to tell everybody about it. So 2 or 3 days after joining the temple, I just went out on Sankirtan with Tamahar, he was my Sankirtan leader, and just started distributing books, because I just felt, okay, this is it. This is what I've been looking for, and so that association of devotees and wanting to give it, and also along with Bhajana Kriyas and now to Nivritti, that you start developing some detachment from unwanted things. Like, you give up your bad habits, you follow the regular principles, and you give up association of non-devotees. Of course, there is an exception there, because sometimes we associate with non-devotees in order to give them our association. So that's different. If we feel strong enough with our own Krishna consciousness that we can associate with others and give our association, then that's recommended. So as we perform our devotional service and we have the association of devotees, we develop a steadiness, that we do, and this is beautiful because we do our service no matter what, maybe except during the pandemic, because generally, I know in the past, going out on Sankirtan, like, you might get up and you don't feel good, but that didn't matter unless you just were really super ill. Like, you just got up and you just did it anyway, because there were so many people out there that need to be saved. So, and that's what we did. We just went out no matter what, every day. So you become steady, and you also get a taste, you get a ruchi. So nishta is the steadiness, and ruchi is the taste, where you want to go out. Although there'd always be a little bit of hesitation at first, it's kind of putting your toes in cold water. You'd be like, okay, here I'm in the Sankirtan van. Like Salochan, another of my Sankirtan leaders, he'd say, if you can just get yourself into the van, that's like the first step. And then what are you going to do? Off you go, and wherever you stop, you get out, and you start distributing, and then you find yourself in an ocean of nectar. You find yourself just totally loving it. As Krishna directs you from person to person, and really it's that personal, Krishna, just bringing you from person to person. I remember once, this is a really weird story, but I was talking with somebody and they were buying a book, and this man came up to me and he started to try to break up the sale. He was a very strange looking man. He was like very all white, very pasty looking. And he spoke like this, very like vituperative, like, don't get any books from them, they're like this. And all of a sudden, I remembered what I was reading the night before about how sometimes snakes take human form and they come up to the Earth planet to try to impede the Sankirtan movement. So when I realized it, I said, I know who you are. I said, you're a snake that's taken birth on the Earth planet just to impede the Sankirtan movement. When I said that, he slunk away. And the man that I was talking to just gave a donation. He took the book, and we just went on, with our business. But so this, it's so nice when we have, we know in our service, like some of you have been doing your service for years and years and years. They've been, someone's been making milkshake. I know Padma Lochana, she made burfi, all the milk sweets for years and years and years till her health just wouldn't permit it. And now one of the second generation, Jaggi Kirtan, he has taken over that service, and he's also very, very, he's developing a steadiness, a nishta, and he's developing some ruchi. He's developing a taste for doing that service. So even though at first we may not have so much of a taste, as we continue to do it, we develop a taste. And then from there, as we develop a taste for our service, we develop an attachment, a detachment for other things. Like, sometimes, just like Prabhupada said that some of his friends came and they were like, we're all going to go to the movies. Do you want to go? And he's like, no, not interested. So it may be that from time to time there's a movie that, interests us, that somehow they're in the realm of Krishna consciousness, seems to fit in. But I know for myself, most of it is full of violence, and it's full of illicit activities, and it just feels like kind of polluting to watch anything like that. And so it's like an elephant, who comes out and he's all dirty, and he goes in the water and he sprays it, he gets all clean, he comes out and he starts rolling in the dirt again. So we want to try to keep ourselves clean. So, but a natural detachment will develop from material activities. We'll actually just be more attached to wanting to get up in the morning early, wanting to come to Guru Puja, wanting to hear Bhagavatam class. We won't be so interested in performing material activities. And then from there, we start developing some bhava, some real love for the deities. And every day when we look at the deities, we think, oh my gosh, these pujaris, they have it. They've got love. They've got love for the deities. And ultimately, it will lead to prema, to pure love. So that's the beauty of this process, is that as we follow it, we will develop a natural attachment for Krishna, a natural detachment from material things, and we'll end up with more love. And as that love grows, it'll kind of spill over, and we'll naturally want to, to give it to other people wherever we go. If we just keep some books in our bag, in our car, and Krishna will arrange for us to meet somebody so we can become bhakteshu chaneshu, which means, just going on with a forward march. And I wanted to read this. This is from one of Srila Prabhupada's lectures. Prabhupada says, one who is engaged in pure devotional service to the Lord is already in a state of liberation called Brahmabhuta. So we know that verse, Brahmabhuta prasanatma na shoshiti na kanchati samas sarveshu bhuteshu ma bhaktim labhate param, that when one is transcendently situated, he at once realizes the Supreme Brahman. He never laments or desires to have anything, that he's equally disposed to every living entity. In that stage, he attains pure devotional service unto me. So, we're getting there. Because Prabhupada says, when one is engaged in pure devotional service, and sometimes he'll say that our services, even though we think, well, my service isn't pure, Prabhupada sometimes called all his devotees pure devotees. Once somebody asked him, well, how many pure devotees do you think are in our movement, Prabhupada? Prabhupada said, well, how many devotees are in our movement? He said, oh, well, 5,000, Prabhupada. Yes, well, 5,000 pure devotees. Because when you're following the process, if you stay on the path, you're going to get there. It may take you a little longer than somebody else, or you may be racing ahead of everybody else, but you'll definitely get there. In material life, when one works for sense gratification, there is misery. But in the absolute world, when one is engaged in pure devotional service, there is no misery. The devotee in Krishna consciousness has nothing to lament or desire. Since God is full, a living entity who is engaged in God's service is Krishna conscious, is also full in himself. He is just like a river cleansed of all dirty water. Because a pure devotee has no thought other than Krishna, he is naturally always joyful. He does not lament over any material loss or gain because he is in full service of the Lord. He has no desire for material enjoyment because he knows that every living entity is a fragmental part of the Supreme Lord and therefore eternally a servant. Prabhupada says the world is miserable for the materially infected person, but for a devotee, the entire world is as good as Vaikuntha, or the spiritual sky. I thought that was amazing. I thought, okay, my vision needs a little more purification here because I'm not always seeing the world like that, But that's what happens as you become a pure devotee. So I'll stop here if anybody has any elaboration. Yes, Verna, Prabhu.
Nice class. Very succinct, and you explain every concept with lucidity. Regarding Arjuna and Yudhishthira, Prabhupada mentions Arjuna in the purport also, that one would think that Yudhishthira is more knowledgeable, but Prabhupada explains that it was done by the will of the Lord that they were put in this situation, this predicament of moha, and So, but I actually find the Arjuna, in Arjuna's case, and in Maharaj Yudhishthira's case, that this quality of like covering that they went through, I find it actually attractive and relatable, because it's a struggle they went through, but then Krishna brought them on, you know, with Yudhishthira through Bhishma Dev, and Arjuna, Krishna himself brought them on the other side. But it's nice to see that, actually, rather than...
It's true, because we can relate to it.
Yeah. So I just find, even like Mother Queen Kunti, you know, all the calamities she went through, and then she says, well, I wish that these calamities fall on me again and again, because by those calamities, and I can remember you.
Thank you. Really nice point. And Prabhupada does mention too that, you know, the natural state of a devotee is to be soft-hearted. So it's not hard to understand why they would be feeling the way that they're feeling. But like you said, Krishna brought them up to the highest platform, to doing their duty. But that, Prabhupada said, you know, we're not cold-hearted. You know, we're not cruel. Like when somebody, I remember when I lost someone very dear to me, and somebody came up to me and said, well, I guess it's your karma. You know, it didn't feel good, you know, it didn't feel compassionate, and it didn't feel like it was the right thing to say. It wasn't not at all helpful. So that soft-heartedness of a devotee is very much wanted, you know, but knowing when to apply the detachment and when to, it is important. So thank you for that comment. That was very important. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you for the wonderful class.
Thank you.
I was going to ask you, who are you? You're just dear friends, but then the scripture says that his enemy was never born, so it seems like everyone were his friends. But my question is, Lord Krishna spoke to him, his family members spoke to him, many great personalities spoke to him after the demise of the Kurukshetra warriors. And but he seems to be overly disturbed about it, because even Srila Vyasadeva came and talked to him, but he was very, very worried about it. You know?
But what was the other reason that he was in illusion? What was like, why did Krishna arrange that for him to be in illusion?
I'm thinking also it's because he wanted him to talk to Bhishma.
Yes,
Right?
that's
yeah,
right.
Yeah. So, but
That's
I was
right.
going to ask you the question.
Yeah.
But you asked, yeah. So,
Yeah, so it's the double reason, you know what I mean? It's
yeah.
both things are there, like, and also that you would feel like that. You know, I'll always feel responsible for so many things. I'll think, oh, that's my fault, I should have done this, or that's my fault, I should have done that. So it's a natural feeling, but in this case, it was exacerbated because he went to Bhishma to seek some peace, to seek some solace, and Bhishma speaking, he was able to receive that. We were able to receive, you know, all the instructions from Arjuna, the Bhagavad Gita, from Yudhishthira, all Bhishma's instructions.
Vishnu would teach him some Bhagavatam there too.
In America, if the child commit a crime underage, they do not take him to jail, they punish the parents. If due to ignorance the souls are suffering, is it the not fault of the father who is not really gave them the training facility instead of like they have to go through suffering?
I mean, maybe not, right? It's like, depending, if it's an underage child, you know, the father is probably going to, well, you know, there was an example that Prabhupada gave too of the aunt and the young boy that she brought up, you know, and he was a bit of a rascal. He would steal things, and she wouldn't say anything, right? So it went on stealing bigger things, and then it went on to ultimately she never chastised him. It went on to he murdered someone, and then he's on the hanging platform, and he has one last wish. What does he want? He wants to speak to his aunt. So she goes up there, puts his ear in, we all know the story, his ear, and he bites off her ear because he said, you didn't discipline me from the very beginning. If it wasn't for you, I wouldn't be here now. So there's that, right? Does that partially answers your question, Yeah. Also, I mean, anybody could say, well, everyone's in ignorance, and so they commit crimes and they get reactions, but they don't really know that. But why is that? It was their choice to be in ignorance. Ultimately, we're in total knowledge. But when we choose to become enemies of Krishna, boom, we're down, and then we choose to ignore. That's where ignorance. We choose to ignore Krishna. We don't really want to know. Sometimes you meet people and you're trying to. I remember early on preaching to one of my friends, because 8 of my friends, we all joined together. But I remember one of my friends was like, ooh, I was explaining about the spiritual master taking your karma and all that. She said, ooh, that sounds terrible. Somebody taking your karma. She was not interested at all in the process of Krishna consciousness. So, Krishna allows somebody to quote unquote enjoy in that situation of ignorance until they finally say, like, probably all of us, help. There's got to be more to life than this. I really want to know the truth. I really want to understand God. Please help me. And then God does help. Right?
Yeah. Now, if somebody asks you, like, what kind of God you are worshipping, that he is instigating, inspiring for Yudhishthira Maharaj to go through suffering for his enjoyment because he wants Bhishma Dev to speak dharma.
I mean, Yudhishthira, I think if you could talk to him right now, he'd say, I was so happy to do that for Krishna.
But you just read he was going through...
He was, but I'm saying after the fact, After the fact, yeah. I mean, sometimes we have to look at things after the fact. Like, for a lot of us, we're going through life and, things happen and we're like, why? I don't get it. Like, why did that have to happen? And then down the line, we look and we go, oh, I kind of get it now. I kind of understand. Or maybe we never understand it, but we stay on the path still. The kind of God, Krishna is a loving God, and he has everyone's best interests at heart. And he's also trying to push us.
You can go on. Let's see.
We all know.
If you read it loud,
Okay. We all know that we are not our body, but it is harder for me to understand that we are not our mind. Why is that harder to overcome? What is the best way to do that? So that's a great question. It is harder to overcome. And really the only way is engaging the mind, is making that river full of dirty water, turning into clear water by chanting. And, I remember reading that, sometimes paying attention to all the little things, and I really miss not being able to do things like taking Charnamrita. I really miss that, because it's such a special thing to do. But, watering Tulsi and, taking Charnamrita and getting up, and all the little things, if you remember it helps to control the mind. It helps to control the mind. Chanting with attention, that helps to control the mind. Reading the scripture, that helps to control the mind. Sharing scripture with somebody else. I know there's a lot of online readings now, and sharing that knowledge, sharing the reading. That's also very, very helpful for controlling the mind. And just praying. Isn't there like a deity like in charge of the mind? Okay, so the moon god is in charge of the mind. Even like, propitiating the moon god, praying to the moon god to help you control the mind. I mean, whatever it takes, because the mind is uncontrolled and more difficult to control than the wind, Arjuna says. So in the body, I mean, it's more right out front. The mind's very devious, so it can plant, like, well, why did he say that? Or why should that? Or why did I get treated that way? That wasn't fair. And, it's just more devious. The body, like you're dealing with something, a disease or something like that. You're just trying to treat it. But the mind is very tricky, so we have to really stay ahead of it. Yes?
Krishna, on the will of the
Okay.
Aniruddha.
Pardon?
Krishna's incarnation, Aniruddha.
Oh, Aniruddha. Okay.
He is the actual-
Aniruddha. Okay. Where's the? Do you have the microphone?
That's okay.
Okay. Okay. All right. So Aniruddha, incarnation of Krishna, is in charge of the mind. Okay. This is from Ram Swarup. Nice class, Majaji. How can a devotee maintain cleanliness while keeping animals at home? I know it's not a good question, but need clarification. You know, it's more difficult for sure, but let's say, one case example, let's say somebody has a service dog, like service dogs are there sometimes for PTSD, some people have emotional trauma, sometimes people live alone and they're afraid to, it's sometimes fearful, especially if you live in a place where there's a lot of land around, you kind of really feel by yourself. So, and Lord Chaitanya, after all, had a puppy, so it's not completely out of the park. But in terms of maintaining cleanliness, I guess you just try to let the dog be outside as much as possible, and when you're going to do your own puja, that you make sure you bathe and that you're all clean, and when you're offering foodstuffs, you try to keep the animal from seeing it, because animals immediately think of eating it for themselves, and we don't want anybody, you don't want the animal thinking of eating it before it's been offered to the Lord. But there are definite situations of people who have animals. I know that devotee Ramadasi, who left her body in Mayapur recently, incredible devotee. This is kind of funny. She designed outfits for Radha Madhava for years and years, incredible seamstress and designer. And she had a little puppy. So Indradyumna asked her one time, why do you have that dog? Why don't you get rid of that dog? And she said, I think I mentioned this before, Maharaj, it's either a dog or a boyfriend. And Indradyumna said, okay, keep the dog. So, in some ways we have to think, we're doing the best we can. There is the perfectional stage, and there is where we are and what we're trying to do. And sometimes animals, I've read stories about in nursing homes, where people are so forlorn really, and so alone, especially now during COVID. In fact, there's a devotee in a nursing home in Stark, what was the name? Sarvasatya. Puri just read with Sarvasatya for 2 hours the other day, because he doesn't have any arms, so he can't hold the book. We're trying to get him a computer. If anyone's interested in donating for a computer for him, it would go by voice command, and then he might be able to do more. But Puri read to him for 2 hours, and what did he say, Puri?
I'm drawing a blank right now.
He didn't want you to stop.
He wanted me to stop.
Yeah, he wanted you.
Stop and just say, come on, a little bit more.
Yeah, he just wanted to keep on going. So the thing is, a lot of loneliness in these places. So in some of them, they'll have a cat or a dog, and one story I read where the cat kind of knew who was going to die. Somehow, some instinct, some super soul. That's really what instinct means. And he would climb up on the person's bed and snuggle with that person until they left their body, So, Shivananda Sain also had his dog that he was very attached to, and when he became separated from it, he felt that, he had done something irresponsible, so he wanted to find the dog, and the dog ended up being with Lord Chaitanya and chanting Hare Krishna his own way, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, and went back to Godhead. Prangavan, you wanted to say something?
Can I put a others opposite way?
Sure, go ahead.
What about Jara Bharat? He was with a full
That's
of people,
true. That's true.
and he chose to be lonely or
Yeah.
alone to worship, and then he got a company of animal, and then it drowned him to 3 more life.
That's true.
So that's not
But
good
maybe
either.
maybe what he did wrong is, there's a story where Prabhupada talks about a man who's taking sannyas and his son, and they're saying goodbye, and Prabhupada said they were both crying. He said, why is he taking sannyas? If he still has that sneha, he still has that affection, he shouldn't be taking sannyas. So maybe, I don't know. I think also that was also a special arrangement, right? By Krishna, for teaching a lesson. But I think people have to be careful of, taking a strong vow, maybe before they're ready to take it also. So I think both things are there. But that is definitely important to remember about Jedbara and the deer.
No, this is not a old story, this is a new story. I mean, I won't say the name because he's still a good standing leader in our movement. I went there with Bhakti Charu Maharaj. For him, he's going to take sannyas. But the night before, he chose not to. But all these years, well, you already know the name. I don't want to mention the name. He's a nice devotee.
Yeah.
Because of his son crying.
Oh, wow.
I went there too.
Yeah.
Because Bhakti Charu Maharaj told me, come, I'm going to give sannyas, you're going to watch. And the night before, and then he started crying to the devotees. I didn't understand because I don't speak I should not say language.
Yeah.
But I could not understand. But somebody translated later. But I saw him, he was very emotional. He said, oh, my son cried. He's 28 years old, his son.
Yeah.
Oh, today is the last supper, no more because you'll take sannyas.
Yeah.
So he changed his mind.
Maybe he'll do it if he gets the opportunity when he's a little older, but yeah, it's so strong, right? That sneha, that moha, very strong. So Prabhupada, he talks so much about it, gives so many different examples. How can devotees, okay, that one I read. Thank you for this incredibly relevant class in sharing that all is in the loving hands of Krishna in divine order. Oh, nice. That was Dina Dwarka, who's always, every day she's there. So thank you for your kind attention. Okay. Okay, your question, Puri?
Yeah.
Okay.
If I can figure out how to turn this.
It might be.
Okay, there we go. So you had mentioned the part about sharing what you've read in the Bhagavatam helps to control the mind. So I just wanted to share something that I was thinking about. So part of the class today was about, or part of the verse was about delusion, and then part of the class was on delusion as well. And this morning, when I was listening to the Bhagavatam, there was a verse about delusion, and it said that delusion is the material representation of the smile of the Mahapurusha, or the universal form. So maybe you could help me understand that, because I don't really understand.
Okay.
But
the smile is the...
Delusion is the material representation of the smile of the Mahapurusha.
Okay.
So my best understanding of that, I was trying to think about it, was if the material world smiles at you, it's like casting you into delusion, right?
That's definitely one way of looking at it,
Uh-huh.
For sure. Yeah. Because there is, you can't say that, like Prabhupada talks about, impersonalists who try to, deny everything. Deny, all the pleasure. So no, there's lots of beauty in the material world. There's lots of pleasure in the material world. But what's the problem, Dukkha Shashvatam. The problem is it's temporary, and that's part of the misery, is that it is so temporary, because you become so attached to something, and then it's not there anymore, the situation changes due to death or whatever. So yeah, does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, it's fleeting.
Pushkar, do you have your hand up? Okay. All right. Okay.
I just read this. When we don't see the connection with Krishna, there is illusion. When I want to enjoy or possess that is delusion.
When you want to what?
When I don't see something connected or someone
Oh, yeah.
Krishna,
Yeah.
there is illusion.
That's delusion, right.
But when I want to possess and enjoy it, that is delusion.
It's not illusion anymore.
Mm-hmm.
It's more
I
heavy.
see. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Okay,
One last comment. That's why the Bhagavatam is there, to separate illusion from reality. First chapter, Dharma Projita Kaitava, distinguishes from reality.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Very nice. Thank you. Hare Krishna. Jai Srimad Bhagavatam.